Everything we know, from people and ants to stars and galaxies to quarks and atoms, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer inside an even bigger universe. Ancient philosophers said that the universe is a dream that we're waiting to wake up from. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. All cultural items, from the dreams of our rodent-like ancestors, to books, to television shows, are merely permutations of the reality we think we live in. Today's age of computers and video games places simulations at the center of our cultural consciousness. A select group of us perform simulations for fun and profit, and we call them games, role-playing and otherwise. We live to run simulations. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations. Hello, you are listening to the Simulationist podcast. Once again, this is iteration 76, and we're recording this on February the 16th of 2014. My name is Josh Trelevin, and with me as always,
Ryan Kirkby.
Ryan. Hey, Ryan.
Hi, very happy to announce it's technically less than 2 weeks now until GodaCon starts up here in Victoria.
We're gearing up gearing up. We're not actually doing that much work.
I'm saving every scrap of money I can find for their silent auction.
I know I've been following some of the organizers on Twitter, and they are definitely working hard.
New location this year sort of thing is there's a lot of unknowns because, back when there was just perks every year, there were some things you could get comfortable with. I know how it works here. I know how this goes there. It's all about one big open forum type space. Not going to be quite the same this year.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it because I'm going as a, a participant, one of the many people who are just going to go.
A looky-loo.
Yeah, looky-loo. And I'm gonna take in everything that it has to offer. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's going to be, once we get into it, it's going to be a very full weekend for me, so I'm hoping to be very tired by the end of it. And we also have family plans at the end of that, too, so that'll be good.
Oh, yes. For us, the end of it will be capped with a wonderful Chinese hopeful buffet. And I think that's a great way to end, any, several-day-long convention. Hit the buffet, yay!
So GodaCon. So if you're listening now and you haven't already got your tickets, I'm not sure on the status of those. You might not be able to get. Check the website, whatever. We don't actually have your news.
Well, if that was officially on the website last time I checked, it said it was until the 4th of February, so it's a little late for that. But when I was buying tickets for my brothers, they said it was based on availability. So, if nothing else, head on over to Skyhaven Games and, see if they're still selling it there, because that seems to be the system that they were using, so. Oh, but don't go technically on the day you're listening to this, if you're listening to it fresh, because they're closed Mondays.
Oh, is Skyhaven closed on Mondays?
Yeah.
Okay.
They've got very good hours every other day of the week, but even they need to rest, and they decided, you know what, Monday. It'll be Monday we rest.
Okay. Fair enough. So that's that. What else do we got?
I do have a nice conspiracy workout for us this week.
Okay, let's go. Or should we? Yeah.
I will focus on that. At least for a little bit. I had a little fun reading a story in the news this week about the Canadian military.
The Canadian military?
Turns out when they were leaving Afghanistan, they had about 300 carts, big old, traveling bins, whatever the military cargo box terminology is.
Like shipping containers?
Basically, yes. 300 of them full of supplies, tents, nothing biodegradable sort of thing. There wasn't we got 17 boxes of disposable rations here. But no, supplies.
Okay.
300 of them were left behind, unable to make a quick and clear route out because of shifting alliances and, you can't use this port system anymore. This road is now blocked to you.
Yeah.
And, they were, good news, they were able to get the guns out quickly enough, the high importance sort of things, the things you really just don't want to leave unguarded, unprotected, without decent military supervision.
Did you ever watch that movie with Nicolas Cage? Is it called Lord of War? Something like that? Nicolas Cage plays a gun merchant, a gun dealer. And basically the U.S. would
in that movie, I think in one, and I think this is based on real life, they would leave just basically a shipment of AK-47s because they couldn't get them out of whatever country they happened to be fighting in. It was more expensive to move than the value of the guns themselves.
It's cheaper to just buy new guns.
They could just buy new ones, and basically, so there's that. So I guess it's a similar situation in that it's very hard to get things back. I mean, it's hard to get them in to begin with, but obviously, the whole thing about starting a war is you gear up and you get your whole nation psyched up for it. You're like, yeah, we're doing this together. You know, we're all in. We're starting a war and we're putting funds into it. And then when you're talking about leaving, it's like, well, you know, we don't want to. It's not as committed. It's like, I just leave it.
Which, I mean, is always been weird to me. I'd expect everyone should be really big on understanding, like, okay, how are we going to get out of here? Because, I mean, the events of the last decade alone have shown us the exit plan is very important. Your strategy on getting everyone and everything out is at least as important as how you get in and keep the supply train flowing. But I don't know why other people don't find it as fascinating as I do. Maybe it's just who I am.
Yeah, well, and I mean, this is why we want to bring this conspiracy element, because sort of the reality is, it's toilet paper, it's tents, it's backpacks, it's clothing. There might be some rations in it, maybe, you know, MR meals ready to eat or whatever might be in there.
The stuff that lasts like 15, 20 years, you can just toss away in a bunker in case of World War III.
Tins of beans. I mean, you sometimes read the stories of like caches or stashes that are dug up from World War I or World War II in Europe, and they'd be like, oh, you know, here's this, you know, this cache that they had in this, like, buried in this bunker, and it's
the war ended and they needed it back for farmland, so they just plowed a bunch of dirt in there, and that was it for another 90 years.
Yeah, and so they dig up a cave in this. Oh yeah, you know, there's like tables and food and like, you know, oil for lanterns and things like that for, you know, soldiers to live under there for. Depending on where it is, but
and you know what? It's almost a shame somebody didn't die there, so it wouldn't be like a modern pyramid.
Yeah.
Like, you died and you have all this stuff with you, so you get to take it into the afterlife.
Yeah. Oh, that may have happened in some cases.
In which case, congratulations on those who managed to die and have possessions buried with them. That's very retro, and that's, you know, at least you go out with some style and flair.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably don't care about that, but it's something. It's something.
Okay, so this happened. This is a real story that recently happened.
300 of these containers got left behind for 3 years, and eventually, I mean, there was plans on getting it shipped on overland routes that would take it all the way out to some place in it seemed like a location in Germany before it hits the harbor and goes all the way back to Montreal. But as it turns out, after a certain amount of time, the seaworthiness of it is voided. Like, nobody's looked at this thing for so many years, we can no longer be certain. You have to recheck and recertify. So they had to send 15 soldiers back to effectively triage. Do we really need this? Can we sell this off for some cash to our allies in the area? So, like, they're selling tents off to, you know, the allies here and there. And some other stuff. It's like, it's not even worth it. Decommission and burn, whatever.
It's funny, too, because the military, it has almost an alien mindset, because they're a material reality, so they do, like, if things cost money, that matters. But also at the same time, with the sums that you're dealing with military budgets, it's like, well, you know, we can afford to abandon these 300 shipping crates because we, you know, next year's budget, we just have to buy it again. Like,
which is interesting, because this year's budget, upcoming budget recently came down, and they got shorted $3.1 billion compared to the previous year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, I mean, you know, it's like money is getting even more important for this Canadian military. But long story short, they triaged it down to 212 containers, and then they had it airlifted to the United Arab Emirates, and there it went on to a harbor, you know, and then it's making its way back. That cost apparently the airlifting somewhere between $7 and $22 million. They're not disclosing the full value of it. So
how do you know it's between, or is that just somebody's?
That's based on the estimate cost of, like, okay, you know, a standard mission cost for this sort of thing on this distance is somewhere between X, you know, and Y for so many containers. Times that by the amount of containers for so many trips, somewhere between $7 and $22 million. Knowing the military, probably closer to 22 than 7.
So they would have had to truck them in to start with, right? Like with trucks, or I don't know if a train goes that. I don't know if there's trains,
First one, then the other sort of thing as availability allows.
So that would have been at least cheaper than airlifting, yeah. And so I guess they would have had to use these big cargo, like Hercules planes, to get them out
stuff
again,
like that. Yeah, airlift it out.
Yeah.
No, that seems like an interesting story about military excess, odd mindsets, and bad planning.
Yeah, or just the accidents that are inherent to
shifting alliances,
an adventure,
like
going into another country like Afghanistan, through a country like Pakistan, which is unstable, and
politically nefarious, we'll call it. Sometimes they're okay, sometimes they get you. It happens.
Yeah.
But on the one hand, it's nice and easy to see it. But that's the cover story, there, sort of thing for a conspiracy. Because let's face it, it's military. So what's the military really doing? You can't trust them. This is conspiracy land.
So what's really in those crates?
What is in the 212 crates? What did they find in Afghanistan to send back?
Yeah.
They couldn't send it immediately. They had to wait 3 years before saying, okay, we don't really need 300. These 212 are enough. We'll send them back. What did the Canadian military really find?
How many bones are there in the human body?
Depending on the age, somewhere around 300. Some of the bones fuse together as you get older. Young people have more bones because they haven't fused and they're not considered just one bone. Weirdness going on, I know. So maybe they found most of a human body and they're shoving it back bone by bone to prevent it from
because
reassembling.
It's like Magneto's corpse or Magneto's skeleton. So if you let them too close together, they'll magnify themselves together.
Oh, maybe it's something demonic sort of thing. Like, this is the land that cannot be tamed. Why? Because the demon rules over all. They found the demon. That's what the whole thing in Afghanistan was. It was never about finding the terrorists. It was about killing the demon that controls the land. They killed it. They separated it into 212 parts, and they shipped them back individually. Whereupon they will spread it across the North American continent to make sure it never reassembles.
Although when you start talking about the demon, for some reason my brain goes to Osama bin Laden. I'd be like, oh, maybe Osama bin Laden had to be, like maybe he was the demon or something.
Well, maybe he was possessed. Maybe that's what really happened. Because they said that they dumped the body, at sea. Well, that's what they claimed with the American military.
Maybe they put in Canadian shipping crates.
Well, that's the thing. Everyone's looking over here at the American stuff. Oh, yes, we dumped it out into the water.
Nobody expects the Canadians.
Hand off to the Canadian. Canadian cuts his demon, infused body up into the pieces and sends it off. And you know what? Maybe most of the parts aren't even going to wind up making it. Maybe there's some, mid-sea shipment transfers, and they're separating this demonic body all across the earth so they can never have it be reassembled.
Oh, I like that. It's got a nice occult spin to it.
I think it could mark for a decent, Hellraiser sort of story sort of thing to it. You could work it with other sort of things. Let's go somewhat more sci-fi. Downed alien spaceship.
Oh man, that'd be awesome if a spaceship landed like in a war zone. Yeah.
Well, what's the more likely chance? I mean, there's gunfire going off, things getting blasted, ship gets damaged, crashes.
Yeah.
So that's it. They're shipping it back within the next 10 to 15 years. Look at the aeronautics industry from Canada and maybe even America. It's going to boom. They're going to come up with all sorts of neat innovations. Why? Because the 212 crates full of tents came back. Yeah, right. Really tense, eh? Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it turns out it was alien artifacts.
Well, in this case, it'd just be alien technology.
Yeah.
That we reverse engineer over the course of the next decade.
I like the thought too that there's 200 crates worth. That's actually quite a lot because if one ship or spaceship crashed, I wouldn't imagine it'd be the biggest. I imagine it'd be more like a fighter plane type style.
Well, it might be that the pieces are highly radioactive from the crash sort of thing. So you got to put a lot of shielding around that.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe some pieces are super fragile. You got to put a lot of them packing peanuts around the whole thing just to make sure nothing breaks.
This crate is mostly packing bubbles or bubble wrap.
Bubble wrap, encircling, the packing peanuts encircled by some of that nice light spray foam you can put in there now. And all at the heart of it is just one little piece, like it's just the size of a walnut, that could put you from 0 to 3 times the speed of light in 7 seconds.
Oh, man, yeah.
So yeah, there's your fun little mental exercise for conspiracy theory. What did the government really send back? Or at least get out of Afghanistan? What did they really do? There's a story waiting there, no matter which way you cut it. The quality of the story, always depends on the writer, so that's up to you. We can only provide you with an inspiration.
Yeah, that's where our job ends, with the inspiration.
Well, we don't want to be too much. I mean, just give us a nice little note, for thanks to inspiration on the inside cover when you finish writing your novel. We don't need co-author credits or anything.
Yeah, we're not greedy.
Yeah, we're just the idea man, that's all.
Okay, well, cool.
Oh, and for the record, on that Nicolas Cage movie, he managed to clear out the plane in about 45 minutes, just by giving away the guns to Free before the American police were able to get a hold of him. I do remember that scene.
Yeah, how did that go again?
It took them the people at the airport about half the day to load up the plane, and the people that were taking it off cleaned the plane out in 45 minutes of guns. So yeah, there's some motivational issues there. But yeah, I do remember the movie. It was a pretty darn good one. Yeah. I prefer his crazier roles. But that's just me. Nick Cage is kind of nuts, and so when he plays nuts, it's the best nuts you've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, the scene I remember from that movie, it is Lord of War, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. The scene I remember about people taking him was that he landed the plane somewhere in Africa, right?
Yeah.
And then he just basically abandoned it or whatever.
Just open the door, said it's yours.
Well, I don't know if that was the same scene with the weapons, but basically the people came one by one and took little pieces off the plane, and then they did a time lapse, and they just the plane just gradually got taken apart bit by bit.
It's kind of like seeing ants as they take apart some bigger creature that they managed to down.
Yeah, that's what they analogized.
I think that's what they were supposed to be doing with that scene. What it winds up looking like.
Yeah, because it's sort of it slumps a little bit, and then slumps on the other side, and then it's off, and then it slumps a bit more. So as they're taking, wheels off, or I don't know what they're taking off exactly, but it's lowering itself down, and then pieces coming off. So it's
by the time the American officials come, there is nothing prosecutable left on that plane.
Yeah,
that was a rather nice scene. So yeah, that's our recommendation for movies this week, apparently.
Well, I enjoyed it. Yeah. Should we move into what we've been doing?
I think so. I think that our little exercise is over with. So give it a thought for the week. What did they really bring home?
Indeed.
Really. And keep an eye out to the other news. Any sort of news that you catch for innovations, technology, weirdness happening, that's how it all connects. That's how it all connects, man. That's the fun of a conspiracy story, is you're able to say, what did they bring back? And then you find these unrelated stories, and then you connect them up. And that's how you come up with the wonderful web of lies and intrigue. So, yes. What have you been doing, though, this week, Josh?
Well, I watched another movie. I was thinking of movies that I've watched. I watched Gladiator once again.
I've never actually seen that. How is that movie?
Well, let me see. How is it as a movie? It's not the best movie, but I noticed as I was watching it, a lot of quotes, I hear people quote Gladiator.
Are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained? Am I not merciful? There's two of those same construction. Are you not? Am I not?
Well, those are basic, almost primal sentences that have a lot of power. I recall a few fearful things marked on the inside of tombs, like, do you fear snakes? Then fear me, for I am Apep the snake, sort of thing, or whatever it is. And that was just very basically constructed sentences that have a lot of power behind them.
But did you get the am I not? Or,
yes.
Yeah, am I not? Are you not entertained? Am I not merciful? Both has the not, the negation in the middle. So that's kind of weird.
Well, it might just be, to make it sound like, yes, this isn't naturally English. What you're hearing is a translation thereof. So, it'd be some sort of, they're speaking in Latin and all that, and that's just how it comes out in direct Latin translation, so they speak like that.
I don't know if they thought that. It's funny because I think in some areas they did a really good job in sort of authentic looking, it felt very Roman to me. I'm sure they made mistakes, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't
never
know
saw
anything
any
about
mistakes.
Ancient Rome.
Yeah.
So it's wow, that looks like real. I felt like I was in ancient Rome with those guys, and so.
But not actually sweating it out with them under the sun.
Well, I was in my own apartment drinking my Coca-Cola and eating my Oreo cookies. So
not quite like you were there, sort of thing. Wouldn't that be an interesting technique? Is whatever, like, however physically active they are in the movie, you try and make it for yourself, and use that as like an hour and a half to 2 hour workout sort of thing. Like if they're running around, you got to do the running in place, and that way you feel more in with the movie because when they're sweating it out, you're sweating it out.
Well, it'd be hard because there are movies like I'm thinking of Die Hard in particular right now. It's like he really gets a workout. I mean that.
Well, there you go. You watch that movie once a week, you are buff by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Because I do know that there are some people who like, oh yes, they're diving under the water. Whenever someone's underwater, you hold your breath to see.
Oh, that's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, see if you can hold your breath as long as they do and how realistic it is.
Yeah.
But no one actually tries like making the swimming motions as they're holding their breath while the person's swimming under the water. Oh, don't try that for Waterworld, by the way. You'll pass out.
I mean, considering some movie, Titanic. How about there's another one? Don't hold your breath for the Titanic because.
No. For Titanic, what you do is you get yourself a bowl of ice water, and whenever someone splashes into the water, you got to dip your hand into the ice water to feel how cold the Arctic waters are there.
Yeah, good thought.
So yeah, there's some fun for you for added immersion. I mean, we don't have smell-o-vision yet, like everyone keeps joking about in the cartoons, but you can add the extra level of reality yourself with a little forethought.
I can't wait to get my own smell-o-vision. Yeah.
Well, see, that's the thing is for every person that's going to wind up watching, like the cooking channel because of smell-o-vision, you're going to lose a lot of people on the hardest and worst jobs sort of programs you can see on there every once in a while.
Yeah, dirty jobs with micro and all
that. That is the forerunner of the whole thing. Yeah. But he's not the only one. And I mean, there are some places like How It's Made, and so it's like, is that burning plastic? Oh, yeah, I left the movie on, and like How It's Made, and they're doing some plastic work there. Okay.
Personally, I would, as long as you can turn it off anytime you want, sort of deal. Like, if you have a smell-o-vision, I don't know if it's a tube that actually goes up your nose or...
just a bunch of scents that get sprayed out into the air.
Yeah,
like
maybe
perfumes.
A little, like, Glade plug-in that sits on your coffee table, I guess. And then...
See, but here's the thing. If you're watching a movie where there's a lot of people running around, and you're doing that too, that scent of sweat you've got going on there, bam, that's a smell-o-vision. You made it happen yourself. Because you're running around like them. And so, you're feeling like them. Smell-o-vision happens, man.
Well, here's another thing, another movie secret that you see on the making of is, all the sounds, all the noises that you hear in the movies. Most of the time, those aren't the actual, like... I think footsteps or something else, and like...
Well, they do that for good reason, though.
They chop cabbages for people's, like, chopping into flesh. They're chopping cabbages.
Which is weird. You think they just get, like, a thing of like, like pork, and just, I'll take a big old ham hock and we'll just chop into that, and that gets you a nice authentic sound, especially when it hits the bone in the end. But for some reason, cabbage sounds more like people to your ears than actual, like, flesh on, meat.
Well, I think in the movies, because sort of the only time we experience like a sword chopping into a human, like somebody's
99 times out of 100 sort of thing.
Most of the time we experience that it is in a movie. So basically, we're accustomed to like that's become our experience. So that's what we expect. And if we don't, hear
you really didn't hack off my arm. That sounded nothing like the movies.
Exactly. If
it's just an illusion. My arm's still really there.
If it happens to you in real life, you're like, that wasn't very realistic. That wasn't like anything.
There was no musical score accompaniment on that. What the heck just happened? There's no style, no presentation, no denouement of action. It just lost my arm. What happened there?
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, I think analogously with smell-o-vision, what they could do, instead of having the exact, like, horrible acrid smells, they could have a smell that's sort of semi-acrid but doesn't quite match. And then people would be like, oh yeah, I know what, human blood freshly spilled. Well, I guess we kind of we get that when we hurt ourselves or whatever. But
anytime you blow your nose too hard and you get a bloody nose, you know what that's like.
What human blood smells like. But I'm trying to think of maybe certain kinds of smoke.
I'm going to say this: human blood is going to probably be one of the worst examples because from what I've seen in the movies, almost nobody gets it right. They use like red paint, and if you've ever cut yourself on there. It's not like red paint. It is dark. It is like almost black sometimes when it gets oxidized, right? And you're looking at it, it's like, this is nothing like in the movie. I saw 37 gallons get spilled out of a human body earlier this week, and that looks nothing like any drop of blood that was splattered everywhere.
Yeah, well,
and then it dries brown, sort of thing. You know,
yeah,
and you look at this like that looks nothing like the dried blood I saw on CSI. You'd expect CSI to get it right. No, it looks red still, but it should go brown.
It should be more brownish. Yeah.
And for those who don't know, in exceptionally long times, it actually bleaches. So blood stains from like historical clothing from like 100 years ago will actually be white, as though it got bleached out. But most people don't know that, nor does it actually come up that often, because people tend to clean out the blood stains within the first couple of days, let alone the first century.
Yeah.
So, you know. But yes, you're saying other good examples for...
Maybe it would happen with blood. I mean, now that you mentioned that blood in the movies is not necessarily very realistic, maybe the smell of blood in movies would be a different smell from real life. Sort of just... So when you smell that smell, when you're watching your movie and you smell that blood smell, you're like, oh, that's movie blood smell. Your brain says that, but you don't think that. You just think, oh yeah, blood. You know, that's
well,
part
maybe
of the
that's
story.
for the best thing, because if they're using it like with the atomizer sprayers to get the perfume scent into the air, I don't want to be like, I just inhaled pig blood. Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. No.
I don't. Would they? I don't know. Would they actually put like tiny fragments of hopefully they figured out the actual chemicals and they could do them synthetically.
Well, that's the sad thing, is it winds up being a case of like a new Coke versus Coke Classic, in which case, even if it's almost completely functionally the same thing, people can tell the difference between the real and the artificial. It's like, when was the last time you had anything that was banana flavored that actually tasted like a real banana and not like an overripe, not really a banana?
Yeah, well, that's the thing about all these candies that, you know, you have your, this candy is lemon flavor, this candy is orange flavor. They figured out in the candy factories a long time ago, they figured out exactly which chemicals they can use to trick our brains. Like, none of that is actual.
Yeah. Lemon is pretty darn good, though. Lemon isn't that bad. And I can imagine, if I was to crystallize a lemon, this is what it would taste like. Yeah. But grape doesn't taste like grape. Grape tastes like purple.
Yeah.
And it's that one particular color purple you keep seeing in there. So I no longer associate that with any grapes. I've never tasted any grapes like that, but I have tasted the color purple.
Yeah.
And it's pretty darn good, especially when it's carbonated.
Well, I got no complaint. Well, not too many complaints, I think.
I do have some complaints, but that's mostly about what colors and flavors they decide to use. Like, honestly, who comes up with a root beer flavored anything other than root beer? If you wanted to taste root beer, you get yourself a can of root beer.
There's root beer flavor. Well, I guess bottle caps are, you know, the bottle cap candy?
Bottle caps are one of the few exceptions, because they're shaped like a bottle, so it'd be like, this tastes like that. But by and large, nobody wants like a root beer flavored jelly bean. Nobody wants root beer flavored, Mr. Freezies. If you want that, you will go get yourself a root beer.
Well, why not? Well, what if you put root beer in your, like if you have a freezy maker, like, you know, a freezy tray?
Ah, yes.
And put root beer in there? Although that probably
ruins
doesn't work
the carbonation.
too well.
Yeah. Sort of thing. But no, if you really want the flavor of root beer, you'll have that. And so I have some issues with a few of the flavors they've chosen. Also the blue for the Mr. Freezy. Nobody likes blue. There's a reason why they switched out of the blue Pepsi so long ago and so quickly.
I liked Pepsi Blue.
You're one of the few people that did then. I know a lot of people that had a sip of it and then they threw the rest on the ground. They were so angry at it. And I have some cheap friends back when the blue Pepsi was out there. So them purposefully wasting it in anger, that was a statement, man. That was more than, tipping out a little bit of the 40 to the homies that aren't here anymore sort of thing. This was like, this angers me. I get rid of it on purpose. So,
All right.
There are better flavors. So if they're going to have smell-o-vision, they better be doing something better than that. Especially because I do worry about foods, like with meats. Because you know how they say, tastes like chicken for anything they can't identify?
Yeah.
There's a whole line a bit in the Matrix about that. But I'm fearing it's like, well, you know what? We really don't have the ability to have all these flavors. So whenever there's meat, it'll just be chicken smell. Roast chicken. No, it's pork. Oh, roast chicken. No, it's steak. We only really have one flavor for meats, guys. It's all going to have to smell like chicken.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm a little worried about that until the technology improves even further. Smell-o-vision plus, in high definition smell.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think they got to get working on it now, because they got a long way to go. So.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the 3D TVs never broke through properly, sort of thing. Not to the degree they wanted to. So they've really got to up their game. You can't come up with anything that's only good enough. You got to come up with something amazing. So, there you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was my week. I mean, I watched a movie and whatever else. Not too much else. Well, how about you?
I read a lot.
Okay.
I've been a fan of the Girl Genius web site for years. I love Phil and Kaja, and right now they're on vacation. This is like the first vacation they've had in a very long time. So they've got someone else writing. They had like radio plays sort of thing that they did, because steampunk and all that. Radio plays kind of fits, and this guy's drawing it. So it's lighter, it's easier, it's not as in depth as the usual huge plot stuff. So I was thinking, okay, I got time to work out some of the things beforehand. And so I go, I have an idea or two. I wonder if anyone else has thought about this as a connection here. So I go onto the wiki site for it. Mm-hmm. This person is related to that person. It's effectively official. It just hasn't been announced within the comic yet. Oh, now I'm going to have to go back and read it all through, analyzing these two characters as siblings and not just, random characters interacting. And so I spent a lot of this week going through the past decade worth of comics.
Decade worth of Girl Genius. Now, is this on the web? Or?
It is all online.
Okay.
You can buy them, and get them proper in book format. I just haven't done so yet. I figure if there's a spot to spend my money, that's a good location to, but I just haven't had the opportunity. Or the money when I did have the opportunity. So I've been going through and I've been reading it all online, and it's good stuff. It's good artwork. And it is very dense in its stuff. There's deep stories like questions like, who is the other? What happened to the heterodyne boys? What's going on here? What do they really know? And so I suppose you could see it as like a soap opera type sort of thing. Is who knows what and where are they and what's going on here? But it's so very well written. No, you're not going to see that. It's gas lamp fantasy, and so it's a good story.
Cool.
And so every time I read it, I catch myself keeping reading. Click for the next page, click to the next page, and rereading and rereading. And every time I go through, I get a little bit more, and I learn a little bit more, and I come up with more new ideas. And like, what if it is this? I wonder how this can help out over here. Does this correlate at all? And so I spent a lot of this week reading about the heterodyne family, which is the main infamous family connected to the protagonist of the series.
Yeah, the Girl Genius.
Agatha Heterodyne.
Yeah.
Formerly Agatha Clay. Turns out she's not really a Clay. She's just had that name, adopted so that she could grow up in peace. And all the story about going on with her family and the politics of Europa over the last 20 years, and how it's been so badly ruled by mad scientists called Sparks.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a fun thing they always use to introduce a thing. Europe is ruled by people called Sparks. Very badly is it ruled by them.
Right.
Well, I mean, you don't expect a mad scientist to know much about political sciences, so they wind up coming into power, then crashing out, sort of thing, and having their own little fiefdoms that they rule with their iron fist. Sometimes literally an iron fist, not always. Sometimes it's it's a claw. Sometimes it's weird, little gadgets and gizmos. Very nice stuff. Very inventive. Very beautifully done. Wonderfully illustrated. I mean, it's won several Hugo Awards, so top-notch reading. But yes, I've been reading deep onto that and just looking at things from the new angles, especially as I go to the website and the wiki on there, and I read up because they got sections for mad theories about everything, and I read it and then I go through. It's like, I think that theory might hold water. No, I don't think I'm seeing it play out right here. It doesn't seem to flow well on that, so I don't think that conspiracy theory works. So I'm having a lot of fun reading and rereading. And so, yeah, that's basically been my week.
Cool.
Except for Cookie Clicker.
And more cookies.
Yes, because they have a Valentine's Day update.
Mm-hmm.
The Valentine's Day cookies are kind of fun. It's nothing like great, like those little chalk candy hearts that say, "Oh, I love you" or anything like that. It's stuff like, "Help, you're all right, I guess." let's go play video games. Let's watch cartoons. Weird little things like that. But they also introduced a new building sort of thing. Prisms which turn light itself into cookies. Which sounds fun and amazing until you look at it from the larger perspective of what's going on in the cookie clicker thing. You start a grandma apocalypse, and you've got horrible flesh-eating creatures from other dimensions melding with the grandmothers to turn the universe into cookies. And now you are taking the very light out of reality to make it dark and creepy and kind of oily and wrinkled.
Cool.
And so, yeah, well, initially it seems like fun, and oh boy, yes. No, the entire universe is getting darker because of your horrible obsession with creating more and more cookies.
I like that, though.
It is a little, and that's a fun thing is you can play the game and never even see that. And they got little news headlines going on about this and that, but you can never see the darker whole that the story is presenting until you sit down and really pay attention. So I'm digging it. I'm liking how it's like, oh yes, turn light itself into cookies. And oh boy, can you make a lot of cookies out of this? I'm getting all sorts of productivity out of there. Mm-hmm. And then it's all like, I'm making the universe a more and more horrible place, and I'm doing it willingly. Why? Well, there's an accomplishment if I build 200 of these things. So I guess I'll keep building them as I am. Cookies are available to spend. And so it's that weird little situation of yes, we can convince people to do horrible, horrible things. Why? Rewards. Tangible rewards? Not really. You just get an achievement. That's all. So, weird little thing to think about as I'm clicking for more cookies.
Yeah. Well, speaking of dumb little games like that, I've been thinking I should probably quit Candy Crush because of the recent controversy. Apparently,
were they?
Yeah, somebody else had made a very similar game, which was fine, and they sort of copied it, sort of not.
Well, how can you sort of copy something that sort of copied Bejeweled?
Yeah, well, that whole thing. So video games already are sort of grayish, but then Candy Crush got big, and then the one company who got the biggest version, or the most popular version, basically Candy Crush, they decided, okay, now we're gonna own the copyright, and they tried to sue the guy who made the one before them. So yeah. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to quit that game, even though I'm still playing
on ethical standards.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. There's always another clone out there you can find that's a little bit more ethical. So.
Yep.
That said, I'm also not quite happy with them for trying to copyright the words candy and saga.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how can you copyright the word candy for a game? I mean, Candyland has had that for 40 years now at least. And trust me, it ain't a saga.
Who owns Candy? Is that Parker Brothers?
I believe Parker Brothers owns the Candyland game. And it's not a saga. You are not doing a Norse Scandinavian epic tale. It is not a saga. And so the fact that they're trying to copy that, you're even using the term is a little disrespectful, I think. Now, I'm okay for them using it, whatever. You call whatever you want a saga. But when you try and copyright it so that other people can't have a saga of their own to tell, even if it is technically more of a saga than your little candy parade, thing going on there, no, I got issues.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try and force anyone to stop playing. My wife likes it. She recently beat to level 305. So hooray, she gets to progress. And I will root for her for that. I just won't play the game myself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, I guess I don't want to take it away from anybody else. But, yeah, I'm just...
All you can do is decide for yourself, eh?
Yeah.
No, I think that's good. All you can do is decide for yourself and advise other people who are questioning.
Cool. So did we go over everything that you've been up to, everything I've been up to?
Well, I could go into the minutiae of Girl Genius, but unless you've read that, it's nothing to connect up with.
Well, so for the listeners, it is a good thing, and it's free.
It's free. It's great. It's wonderfully written, beautifully illustrated, and magnificently colored.
Cool.
So, yes. And, well, right now, as I said, they're doing a little bit of a vacation story, so you can get started and get yourself up to speed. And trust me, it's not that hard to get up to speed. It is good, easy reading. You'll catch yourself like 300-400 pages in before you even realize it. So, yeah.
Okay,
Great times ever to get started.
Ready recommendation. So yeah, you ready to move on to somewhat of a main topic?
I do believe we have a good main topic this week.
Main topic. What does a home mean for a hero, or the hero's home?
No,
now,
the protagonist of the story.
Protagonist.
Let's face it, not everyone's a hero in the story. You got anti-heroes. Technically, you got the story of a villain.
Yeah, or home or house, basically, because, like I was thinking earlier, there are some stories where the home or house is almost an adventure locale in itself. Like the Narnia series, like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, has, at least towards the beginning of the book, the house itself is the setting for adventure, and one of the rooms happens to be a doorway to another world. But it's sort of got that impression that a home or a house can be bigger or smaller, or, you know.
Well, and I mean, you can look at the Avengers comics, and they have the Avengers Mansion, which is supposed to be like a home for each of them. There's a place for them to crash and all that. But it isn't really a home for almost any of them except for, Tony Stark, as it's connected to his family. So in that case, you have this wonderful place where they all meet and they all do their stuff and they do their tactical battle simulations underground and all that, and they've got all their gizmos. But is it really a home to them?
Well, yeah, I imagine if there's like machinery and equipment, it's more of a workplace than a home.
and that's the thing what can be a home for a lot of people, for other places, is just like this is your new office. Congratulations.
Although, yeah, if you're Tony Stark, or if you're Wallace from Wallace and Gromit, your home might be very mechanized, very work-like. Your home might be
to various degrees of ability. I mean, I don't want to put Wallace, next to Tony Stark in terms of capability.
You don't think they're similar?
I think they have similar themes. I just don't think Wallace is in the same caliber as Tony.
I want to see them switch roles. I want to see a clay animation version of Iron Man, like a movie.
I think that could work.
And I want to see, what do you call it? Real life,
live
action Wallace and Gromit.
I don't see that going quite so well.
In the style of Iron Man, like complete with music and everything.
Well, there was that one adventure where they wound up going to the moon because they ran out of cheese.
Yeah, there you go.
And so that one might work okay for that. But I don't think anyone will be able to see Wallace and Gromit as Wallace and Gromit unless they're made out of clay. So that I might pose some technical restrictions.
Possibly. Although, like, who's that big actor who was in the British version and The Hobbit?
John Rhys Davies?
No. Martin Freeman.
Yeah.
I think he should be Wallace.
Well, maybe. But it's the same thing as any time when you're converting the formats over. People were saying, does he really look like Peter Parker to you? He doesn't look like the Peter Parker I knew. Despite the fact that a lot of people, their image of Peter Parker comes from the 60s cartoons. And no, Peter Parker has not had that haircut in several decades.
True.
Sorry, but so saying he doesn't have the right haircut. I can understand that sort of thing. And I will say, for stuff like Superman, they really did spend a lot of time drawing his face in the same way every time, especially during the Silver Age. Mm-hmm. There were times when I could tell this person was Superman because of how the jaw and all that was structured, as opposed to, he's of this size and that sort of thing. Yeah, so converting him over into the movies like they did in 1978, that was a big leap of faith. So I don't know how well it translates out. Always a bit of a risk, unless you can find that one actor that really does look like it, like Professor X. It's like, yeah. They totally have to get Stewart to play him.
Yeah.
But c'est la vie on that.
Well, we were talking about the home of the hero and what the home means. So I guess the home happens sort of at the beginning of the story and at the end of the story, right?
Or if it's a multiple book sort of story, then it's in between.
It can be, yeah. Like in the interludes, they go home and have tea.
Although, mind you, depending on the availability of the home to the hero, I know both Dr. Fate and Dr. Strange in the Marvel and DC comics, Oh, but not respectively. It works the other way around. They can effectively just, like, oh, and then I teleport myself back home anytime, and that's where they do their studying or their, like, whatever they need to get done before they go back out.
Okay. Well, and Doctor Who brings his home with him.
Oh, yes, that's a good one. So, yes, if you're a doctor, your home tends to mean something different.
Yeah. And if you're in the movie Up, your home goes with you.
Well, okay, so we can call him Dr. Oldman then.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I figure anybody that can manage to get his own house moving under the power of balloons probably deserves a doctorate degree in something, if nothing else than engineering. And
and also I was going to ask, well, let me see where we can go with Harry Potter's home, because the home he starts out with is not very pleasant. It's very small, and he lives under the stairs, and right? So that's a home of a sort, but then he gets taken out of it. Like, that's a place he doesn't want to be.
Although, I gotta admit, a nice small place under the stairs, and when anyone's going any which way. So if you're the kind of person that likes to keep track on, like, the other people in the house, like if you're like a parent sort of thing, having a bedroom that's at least partially, under the stairs or next to the stairs, then when they're sneaking in or sneaking out at what time of the night.
Okay, yeah, so there's an advantage there.
But no, Harry Potter was not of that kind of sort, and that was very much showing his horrible life conditions. As to how they managed to keep him that way without getting, Child Protective Services called on them, well, something else for another day.
Yeah. And another thing about Harry Potter is that the Hogwarts is both a school and a home. It's a
boarding school, effectively, yes.
And so they have adventures almost within a home, right?
Which is a very interesting thing. I mean, the concept of adventure within the house that you now come to live in, that's been used a few times. If you want a real spooky story on that, The House of Leaves, I believe, is a greatly crazy story.
Okay, I don't think I've heard of that one.
Well, they do some real good mind mess stuff with that. If I ever get the opportunity, I'll try and get the book myself, and then I'll give it over to you. So The House of Leaves works great as a nice thing. It's not exactly a friendly story, though, I must say. It's a very dark and twisted one. I know there's been a few instances for Lovecraftian stories that involve something in the basement or down under here and there, similarly unhappy. Okay. But they don't qualify really as a home. I don't think Lovecraft ever really wrote much on a home being a home. It's just a place where you live, and then stuff happens elsewhere out in the world. For him, the home was almost like a timeout zone. Like, nothing really happens in your home. You might study your books there. You might keep your correspondence going on there. But by and large, nothing happens in your home. You got to go to barns out in the woods, and hit the other spots. Because although he liked speaking very much about the old Victorian homes of New England, it is basically like a tag. Okay, nothing happens here. So I suppose maybe the fact that it wasn't mentioned so much and nothing happens there indicates even a lot more as to what he thought of a home being. So you can learn a lot about the author by how they imagine the homes for the characters. At least as much as how the characters see their homes.
Could be, yeah. But, well, yeah, you think of if you're a younger person and you live in somebody else's home, like your parents' home, then yes, something like the basement can be very mysterious and scary.
Attic too,
but
depending on how much gets used for the area.
But of course, if you're writing from the perspective of a homeowner or the dad, if this story is about somebody who's a father or a homeowner, they probably their basement is what? It's the basement. It's where I keep my stuff.
I don't know, man. If they find mold in the basement and they're a homeowner, that could be just as scary as any kids think. Because man, making sure you get rid of the mold in the basement, that's expensive. That's the fear of financial, just losing your cash out because I got to keep the house from collapsing in on itself.
Yeah.
That's a mundane fear. Let's probably not talk about that because that's just a depressing thing. It's
Okay, yeah.
What if there's termites down there too? Oh, yeah.
Now, are there characters who are motivated by I want? Because I know in real life, I know a lot of people who one of their biggest motivations in life is that I want to own my own house. They really care about it.
I'll admit it, especially when I'm watching the Home and Garden Network sort of thing, and they're doing like the house hunters. It's like, I want that house. No, I want that house too. I want that house as well.
Yeah.
I want all those houses. I could have so much good. I could have a den in that place. Oh God, it's going to be so nice.
And there are people in real life who buy multiple houses, who own multiple houses, and that's sort of because they're rich enough or whatever reason.
Well, that's the thing is one of the programs they had on there was first-time buyers. They get a house that has like an attached suite or something where they can rent out, and then it'd be like they only have to pay $300 a month on their mortgage. The rest gets paid effectively by the tenant. And that seems pretty smart. So, if you're okay with being like the landlord sort of thing in that sort of situation.
Yeah.
Or a landlady,
financial sense.
It works either way. It's a nice way to help pay off for your home. All you need to do is get that first down payment and then the tenant in there, and bam, you got it made.
Now my question is, transitioning over to the heroic mindset, or the sort of the D&D, the protagonist, your player character, or whatever. I guess they can be motivated by real estate, for example. They want to, but not always. Like, I don't see that often as a motivating force. Like, I really want to own that house, so I'm going to spend the 90 minutes of this movie trying to do what I have to do. It's sort of... Yeah.
I recall seeing stuff like that in a few movies where getting the house was the big thing.
Yeah.
Mostly during 80s and 90s comedies. It's kind of fallen out since then. And the travails that happen once you get the house. You finally got what you wished for. Hope it was exactly what you wanted.
Yeah.
Sort of situation. Oh, no, it turns out to be a money pit. Like the movie The Money Pit.
Yeah. And there's that movie with David Spade in it. And it's not the actual... Like, David Spade plays a guy who is he writing a story? I think it's Joe Dirt. Or something like that. No,
Joe Dirt is about him telling the story on the radio waves, and it's all effectively done in flashback. As spoiler alert, he learns that the family he's made for himself with his friends is better than whatever family he might have really had, genetically.
Okay, that might have been it. But there was a story in there somewhere about how some guy built a house, and he kept on expanding the house into the garden. Maybe this is not David Spade.
I don't think it was Joe Dirt. But it does sound like a nice story. So if you can ever find the title of it, put it in the credits at the bottom sort of thing. And
I'll put it in the show notes.
Get everyone to see.
And also what Adam Sandler trying to win his house back in maybe more than one Adam Sandler movie.
Some of his earlier works, definitely. Happy Gilmore, I believe. He had to win the tournament to get the money to keep the house. Or
yeah, he's trying to keep his dad's house or something, yeah.
The family homestead.
Or the family house.
Which I think is a really nice motivation in terms of D&D stuff.
Yeah.
The evil baron does collect a lot of taxes, sort of thing. If you want to make sure you've got enough taxes for it, well, maybe you should find your way over to those goblin warrens and loot them. In which case, it's just that weird, eternal triangle. The goblins loot the baron's money trains for the gold that they take. You loot the goblins' warrens for the money to pay for the taxes that the baron's taxmen take. Who really winds up with any of the money?
I guess whatever merchant you are who's selling goods to the adventurer, that might be...
Well, they wind up having to pay taxes to the Baron, too. The evil Baron.
I'm picturing, going back to Nick Cage's character. War is good for business, peace is good for business.
It's true. But here's the thing is...
or is that Quark from the...
Well, those are two of the rules of acquisition. I wasn't going to mention that, but now that you've brought that up, yes. There are two of the many rules of friendly acquisition. So,
yeah.
You could wind up having the story start off with we need to keep the farm, and then it could just be like, okay, the premise of this little mini campaign is that everyone is somehow related to the farm. How are you connected to this group of farmlands?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's a nice way to work out. It's like, I'm the second son, I've been reading books, up in the attic sort of thing, and that's how I can cast spells. I'm a hedge wizard. Whee! And then you could have, a reasonable excuse for why the warrior is working around with a scythe. It's not like a battle scythe. No, man. It's because it's spring, and I don't need this thing till the fall, so I can resharpen it back up again if need be.
Yeah.
I'm going in.
Scything all the goblins.
And it makes enough sense. You can get some more oddities out of what would otherwise be a normal dungeon crawl. And so I think it's worth a nice perspective there. You could work, well, in D&D terms, a ship is like a moving house. For many people it is. Mm-hmm. And so that way, getting enough money to get your own ship might be seen as the same as trying to get house or property. And I think that works wonderfully as a nice motivator for why do you keep going into these dangerous places and risking your life? Well, I want to get my own house. It's going to be a boathouse. It's going to be sweet, just you see.
Yeah. But, I mean, well, let me see. Are there characters, though, who don't care about houses? Or?
Well, there's many wandering characters. That's the big trope in the Westerns, is the eternal traveler. Yeah. Never stays in one spot too long, and he's always there when danger happens.
And I guess he gets often he'll get tired of that. He'll be like, oh, I hate being on the road. Or does he, I don't know, maybe he doesn't care.
He doesn't seem to care. I know for a long time Wolverine in the comics was doing something similar. He was effectively a traveler when he wasn't part of the Avengers, 2 or 3 different types of the X-Men and some other stuff. Wolverine was everywhere. But occasionally he was also the loner going around. I think he technically owns Xavier's school right now, so he's got his own place. Turns out when you live a really long time and you've got secret operative friends, you can get a decent bankroll going if you really need to. Wolverine was loaded all these years.
I gotta look into that.
Still walking around in like a raggedy jeans. Who knew? There's the people they don't need any sense of a home, and that is effectively a large defining trait for them. I believe in 4th edition there was even powers associated with that. You'd be like the Eternal Wanderer, and you had the ability to even like wander to places you shouldn't physically be able to travel to. Like you could find yourself in the afterlife, just wandering around there. 24 hours, after you started where you're wandering, you'd be in the afterlife. How'd you get there? Whatever. One of those weird 4th edition quirks. You can just always wander for... Yeah.
Was that a part of a class or a feat or a skill? Or?
It was one of those weird destiny things they had going on. Some people become demigods. You become the Eternal Wanderer. Anywhere in reality, you can eventually wander to there.
Yeah, but that comes around, what, level 21 or something?
I believe so. I never looked in too deep on that one. It's just something I had heard mentioned, and it's like... That very much defines the Eternal Wanderer, the lack of a home.
Yeah.
I know in the books that I'm reading for the Wheel of Time series, the main protagonist, and I'll call them protagonists because several of them are from the same hometown area. They both have a home and don't have a home. They can't really go back there because they're too busy trying to learn what's going on, master their skills, and not get assassinated. There's a lot of intrigue going around with them, and they don't want to bring that back. At the same time, they always have the 2 rivers back home sort of situation until it winds up getting threatened. In Book 4, I won't spoil what happens there and who goes and does what, but it's a reason to go back. It's a reason to do things. Why not follow this guy all the time and just do what he says? Listen, I think my home's in danger. I got to get going back home and make sure, my family's all right. And so in that case, the home, itself as something in danger, just the same as like a princess gets kidnapped by a dragon sort of plot. The homestead's in danger is a great plot for motivation. Don't do it too often, though. Otherwise, it becomes a little hackneyed. And then, especially in games, like D&D, you're going to wind up having people say, well, why do I even bother having it? It's more trouble than it's worth.
Well, no, because, that's fine, but that's another aspect of characters that you can... Although, I guess it would be a little funny if your entire party is like, no, we're all being homeless because homes never work out for any of us. But I can imagine it should work for 1 or 2 characters to just be that sort of archetype of that, they have no use for a home, they just... home is wherever they lay their hat. How does that go? Hang their hat?
Yes, home's where you hang your hat. On the other hand, it makes sense for some classes, but not others. Wizards, by their very nature, kind of need some place to study. And if they want to make some alchemical items, they need a spot to make that. Yeah, if there's magic items going on, they definitely need a spot for that too. Yeah. So they're very much bound to a specific location.
Unless they can, well, I guess location.
Get a portable stuff
going
on.
Portable, like a dimension, what do you call it? Dimension.
A pocket dimension sort of thing.
Demiplane.
I was thinking more mundane, like a traveling gypsy sort of thing, where you've got the background and they're making all their potions in the back whenever they're not moving from place to place. Because trying to make explosives in the back of a moving wagon seems recklessly stupid for even adventurers.
Actually, that reminds me. I had a barbarian character one time, and I think he started at level 5 or something, so he had some money to spend. So basically, he had like a train of horses and servants and wives too. And he had the 5 wives or something like that. And
have some fun with the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
So basically, he had this entire village that pretty much went with him on every adventure. Because he just,
I like
the
that.
cooking pots and
especially because if you're the kind of person to try and take everything you can out of a dungeon, it kind of helps to have those extra hands and a spot to put, that bejeweled idol you didn't want to take the jewels out of. Because, the jewels seem valuable, but in part of the idol, it could really fetch a decent amount to a collector. So I'm going to take the whole darn thing, even if it takes us like a half week to pull the thing out of the evil cultist, sacrificial chamber and up the stairs and, into the back of a wagon.
Yeah, and I like picturing a barbarian doing that too, because it's like sort of comprehending, but I'm not sure. But of course, the thing about if you have an entourage like that, it's a big bullseye for the DM. It's like, ooh, what can I do with this?
On the other hand, it always seems like a cheap shot to me as the DM. It's like, oh, sure, I could say, oh yeah, and then Knowles ate everybody when you weren't looking. But that's a real cheap shot, and I think there's a lot more fun and stories and interaction you can have with the characters than just by, saying, oh yeah, and then dragons, come by and breathe fire on everybody.
Well, no, I mean, hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I was thinking more like, oh, well, your whole entourage got kidnapped by somebody else, so that brings you to their next adventure. So that's like a cheap way to draw you into whatever adventure.
On the other hand, you could work it in a different sort of style, whereby rescuing a person means they'll follow you around and become part of the entourage. Thing.
And I had that happen in the game I played too. Yeah.
Yes, I find it's a nice thing. It's a very much good non-material award for keeping these non-combatants alive. Sure, you're supposed to rescue the person because you don't want to leave them there. And so, what's your award? Temporary henchmen. Mm-hmm. And depending on how well you treat them, it could become even more than that. Diablo 3 has a nice system whereby the blacksmith and the jeweler, you can upgrade their places so that they can produce better stuff and have more availability for you. Although it is seen as something like a bit of a money sink.
Okay.
It's like, okay, yeah, I guess I'll upgrade it. I can find better stuff out in the wild killing monsters.
Oh, well, that's just a game balance issue, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think a good proper DM in any story can help balance that out much more on the fly than, updates in a video game.
Well, I think if you're a skilled player too, and a skilled negotiator and thinker, often what you can do in a D&D campaign is you can leverage NPCs and henchmen and stuff probably more than you're supposed to be able to. Depending what the DM lets you do, and sometimes you can outsmart your DM too a little bit.
From time to time, it is always a little fun.
But basically, yeah, you can get away with doing more than you should be able to just simply by saying, using sort of this social influence. You don't even have to necessarily roll checks. It's just like, is he my friend or is he not my friend? Is he going to do this for me or is he not? And sort of the DM's like, well, I guess, he doesn't have a reason not to, so I guess he sees the profit for him in it, so
yeah, you get yourself a nice dwarven blacksmith or smelter ally sort of thing, and then you see how much volume of metal you can get out of the dungeon. Well, these goblin swords are looking kind of pitted, and they're not really steel; they're just iron. So 1/3 of their weight gets melted down into base metal. Okay, let's see how much metal we can get out of this dungeon, and then it winds up becoming a horrible version of a mine.
And you play D&D the Mining.
And you know what? That's fun to play from time to time.
Yeah.
I do have a nice special spot in my heart for the people that are willing to do something like, okay, now we've got pry bars. Let's pry up everything we can, smelt it down, and try to get the most value out of this dungeon possible. Rah!
Sweet. I wanted to just take a step back to something I said earlier, just in case and somebody is thinking, when you have an entourage with you, like my barbarian or whatever, that had his whole basically a
extended
train.
family and
yeah.
friends.
In some ways, it might be a cheap shot if the DM's a dragon comes and get them. But at the same time, I want to warn players that the D&D world is a dangerous place, so you shouldn't necessarily just willy-nilly go and take your whole train into the wilderness because something bad may happen. And maybe the DM ought to warn you a little bit about that too.
On the internet, a small side quest sort of thing to rescue someone, you're going through the Badlands and, we'll say the cook gets kidnapped by harpies and you got to go save him before, he winds up becoming food for them. He goes from chef to, the main course. And so that just to help highlight, if you're high enough level, the harpies aren't even much of a threat, but it does highlight the danger of the area. So as a small side quest sort of thing, I see it very nicely done, where you are pretty much guaranteed to get the person back. They're a little frightened. Everyone stays closer to the whole thing, and maybe they start learning how to use bows. Get a couple arrows going on there just to help keep that sort of stuff at bay. That works great. The whole, oh yes, all 5 of your wives have been kidnapped again. By the evil wizard of this particular region. You got to go save them. Otherwise, they become his 5 wives.
Well, at the same time, though, I've been watching... Well, I just watched Gladiator, and I also watched Game of Thrones recently. And in some cases, depending on how valuable they are, though, in some cases, though, if your enemy happens upon your camp while you're away, they'll just lay waste to it. They'll be, oh yeah, these are my enemy's 5 wives. Well, I guess they're all dead.
Well, that seems like a bad thing, because you can really force a person's hand by kidnapping their loved one, sort of thing.
Yeah, well, maybe maybe he kills 4 of them and holds the other one hostage or something like that.
But why do that when you can kidnap all 5, move them to 5 different locations, and for every task you do for me, I shall return 1 wife? And then you get the interesting chance of saying, well, you know what? Wife number 5, we really weren't connecting very well. What if I only do 4 tasks for you? And then you set up for one heck of a nice vengeance scene when she breaks herself out and comes gunning for you.
Okay, yeah. I like your evil overlord thinking, because a lot of times it's the bad guys are just, vulnerable friends of my enemy. They're dead. It's like, no, you got to be smart about this.
It's good, and it technically does work, and that gives you enough reason to go a slaying for the evil villain. On the other hand, you could have you could work it for even more potential storylines. Why is this person doing these otherwise horrible acts when they're known to be a hero? They're doing it because their loved ones are in danger. They're being blackmailed into this.
Yeah,
and you can get a much better story, much more immersive storytelling that way through it. And I don't know why other people would just take the cheap route other than, no, I don't have a story this week. Your wives are kidnapped. Sorry. You going to go find them in time? You got a time limit until, let's see, we got done in 4 hours. You got 4 hours in real life time to rescue them, otherwise they're dead.
Yeah.
Da-da-da-dun.
Because basically what happens in Gladiator is...
Spoilers.
Yeah, well, I think it's early in the movie, so it's not too much of a spoiler. I think it's in the first 15 minutes or so, is that the main character, the Russell Crowe guy, he gets picked by the Emperor to be the next Emperor, but the Emperor doesn't have a chance to tell anybody, and so before his...
Before the proclamation.
The more legitimate ruler, I guess, like his closer heir, I guess, is closer to him in the family line. Basically, the guy kills the old emperor and becomes the new emperor, so leaving Russell Crowe out,
in the cold, so to speak.
In the cold. So the new emperor is like, well, I got to get rid of him because he's a political rival and all that, blah, blah, blah. And so he just basically sends armed soldiers to the guy's house and just, like, no kidnapping, no negotiate, just kills his wife and kid, just dead, and that's sort of like, that's part of the heroic it happens to Luke Skywalker too.
Yeah.
It's like, his home gets decimated.
Uncle Owen, Andrew, no.
Yeah. So I mean, you can only use that once per character, obviously.
Well, unless you're in D&D, whereby you can resurrect people, in which case that might happen more than once. But whether or not they want to come back is like, no, this is the last time.
Yeah.
I'm staying dead. I tattooed a "Do not resuscitate, do not resurrect" on my chest. Please respect it.
Yeah, and maybe this is another Gladiator spoiler, so sorry about this. But he doesn't after his family gets killed. Obviously, he has a death wish, and he mentions that many times. And you can guess, does he live at the end of the movie? Do you?
I haven't seen it myself.
The movie called Gladiator.
Yes, turns out his wife and kids were not really killed. Their dummies were put into the place, sort of thing. Like other lookalikes. They're still alive. He gets to reunite. It was a Disney film, right?
I don't know how those...
Boy, can you imagine Disney making Gladiator?
Well, I mean, Disney's involved in adult productions nowadays just through other companies, but I don't know.
But as a Disney film
Disney,
sort of thing, can you imagine them trying that? It would not work out right.
Yeah. Do people die in... I think a few people die in Pirates of the Caribbean, and then Pirates.
By and large, but nothing too big.
I don't think kids die.
They do have the same problem of missing family members.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck happened to everybody's mom? Sometimes there's dads, sometimes there's fathers,
in the Disney
and all that.
movies?
In the Disney movies,
Yeah.
where did the mom go?
Yeah.
It's just like a missing mom syndrome in Disney sometimes.
Yeah. And that's because it's so powerful, and it's the beginning of the hero's journey to remove one or both parent figures. So that's how you...
Well, that's one of the reasons I actually liked the Tangled story so much, is there was moms aplenty there. Yeah. Usually there's just a dad involved, in which case, no, there was a mom, a stepmom sort of thing. And by and large, people had moms, which is not always seen in Disney. So, at least they're acknowledging and changing the pace up a little bit for that movie.
Yeah. Well, they're always trying new things with Disney. I think pace is slow, but they're always trying to expand into areas where they feel like they've neglected. So I mean,
or at least get pressured into. It's like people are saying, "Hey, this is looking like a really nasty trend. You're not doing it on purpose." It's like, no, we'll show you we're not.
Yeah.
Okay, the next movie we're doing something like this, and we're doing it up like that. Okay. So at least they acknowledge, which is better than some companies.
Yeah. So the hero's home.
But yes, here's a nice thing for you, is the home. The home is like almost like a family member itself. So because historically people stayed in the same area for a long time, several generations. In terms of like especially important people, their home, their ancestral home, was almost like a family member to them.
So it has like a personality.
If not a personality, because sometimes, like in the Disney films, they'd have it, like the house might actually be able to talk, and there's smiling windows, and and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Other times, the house itself gives a sense as to who the person is by what things are like. Gormenghast, the castle itself, it showed how old and how brought down to earth things were. Because at one time, apparently, it was all in use, the wonderful, massive, city-sized castle. And then, there just wasn't enough people to be everywhere. You didn't need to use certain wings. And then you got certain areas that haven't been even touched by a human hand in 2 centuries. And so that gave a sense as to the ancient nature and the decayed hand of the ruling, iron fist, as they're not able to just have the power because they don't have the people anymore. And so from that, the home itself tells you what it's like to be part of the ruling family, what it's like to be there.
Yeah.
Hogwarts, I think, gives a nice example, too. You go from the very mundane, life under the stairs, horrible existence, to, oh yes, the passages move from time to time, so you really have to make sure you're going to your host, your home or whatever little dormitory area at the right time of night, otherwise you're going to have to take the alternative path up, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so the home, in which case, although I guess it's technically ancestral for Harry because his mom and dad went there as well.
Yeah.
So that helps define the nature of what it's like for him to now be a wizard. When he changes from from normal person to you're a wizard, Harry. It goes on to yes, he switches his home. And so that way you can see the home as a reflection of the person. Yeah. There are some people who, like in the comics, say, like with the superheroes, the city is a reflection of the hero. Batman's Gotham is very much a reflection of him. Superman's, depending on the age, sometimes it's Superman and his Metropolis, sometimes it's Superman and, Krypton and the jeweled
Or what
city
about
of Kandor.
Smallville even?
Exactly, when he's just Superboy.
Yeah.
And all that, it reflects on who he is at that stage.
And
so that's nice. On a more personal level, it works down to the home itself where the person lives in. Mm-hmm. So I mean, the X-Men with their institute for higher learning or special students or whatever they're calling it these days, because they've changed the name a few times, I believe. Reflects as like you being separate and different. You have to go to a new school, be your own thing, mm-hmm. and it separates your isolation from the rest of society, even though you're trying to better yourself and try and integrate. Like, for some odd reason, Peter Parker in like the Ultimate Universe can't go to that university. He can't go to Xavier's Institute for Gifted Children. Yeah. He's not a mutant.
Well, I was thinking to myself about Spider-Man and where he fits in all that, because he lives in New York, which mm-hmm. is sort of an analog to a real-world city, right?
Yeah. Is he actually in the Manhattan area, or does he live in Queens with Aunt May?
Oh, I don't know for sure, but maybe Queens,
Maybe he's over in Staten Island.
I'm not sure. But it's funny because I don't feel like Spider-Man and New York have the same relationship. I mean, Spider-Man definitely cares about New York.
He works in New York. He loves to sling his webs there. Yeah. Oh boy, you can get some good speed and some good height off that stuff.
But it's a very different relationship than, say, like Superman Metropolis or Batman Gotham. It's like Spider-Man. He's almost just another person, sort of. I guess because New York is a real city.
Maybe that's the nature of New York. It doesn't matter how good and heroic you are. You're in New York, buddy. You're just another person here.
Yeah.
So there's that way. But I think the home, the family home that he has with Aunt May, where they're just being able to make ends meet sort of thing, because she needs her medicine here and all that.
But he always that's almost like Harry Potter. He always lives in that little.
Well, technically he hasn't lived in there for a while.
Or he has an apartment, right?
He had his own apartment for a while. He had his house with his wife, and then things got retroactively canceled, so now he's living somewhere else. Yeah. But the family homestead, that is Peter Parker. It's not Spider-Man as the hero. It's Peter Parker as the person. Yeah. Who is Peter Parker? Peter's the kind of guy that will go to school, have a job doing photography, and try and support his aged aunt. Yeah. In the family homestead. I mean, it doesn't hurt that his that hot redhead is living next door there. Oh, yeah, take out the trash at the right time of night. Maybe you get a chance to have some words with her, sort of thing. Peter, play your cards right, eh? But the home, it reflects on who he is. He's not like the Fantastic Four. They have the Baxter Building. It's full of electronics. And it's super reinforced so that the thing can actually pick up a giant piece of machinery and not collapse through the floor.
Yeah.
It doesn't have, all this, weird high-tech gizmos. Because Peter's smart. Peter can have all those high-tech gizmos. And, especially classically, he does have a little chemistry set that he uses to make more web formula. Yeah. That's just, on the, his dresser shelf.
Yeah.
He's doing that stuff up top, and then, oh, no, I got some stuff spilled on me. Opens up a drawer, changes shirts. Yeah. That's how he's working. That's the kind of person he is. He is not the high and mighty. He's just Peter Parker, another guy. And that's why maybe New York seems like, for him, it's not that special, because he doesn't perceive himself as that special. Even when he is Spider-Man, he's still Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And so that way you can really learn, who the hero is that way. Is Wolverine, in part of the X-Men mansion? No, that's why he's the Wanderer sometimes. On the other hand, picturing Scott without the X-Mansion, well, he's usually up in Alaska in that case, but that gets really weird because there's some horrible stories that turn him into just an awful human being.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that. We'll put that as a topic for
a different day's topic.
Put that as a pin. Bad writing turning you into a horrible person.
Yeah.
Pin in that one. But yes, he is very much part of the mansion. In many of the alternative futures that you go to, he takes on the role of Professor X when Professor X leaves. He doesn't like to be called Professor. He just likes to be called, like, Mr. Summers sort of thing, even if he does have a degree in whatever.
Yeah.
So, yes, he is a character as much defined by the mansion as anything else about his life.
I suppose there are some characters who are almost set pieces of the house. Like I'm thinking of Alfred now, who sort of belongs in the house.
Stately Wayne Manor.
He's almost like a piece of furniture or something, like.
Well, yeah, especially once he decides to, like, oh yeah, I'll take care of this kid for the rest of my days, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Mind you, he's very much more than the rest of the furniture and all that. He's much more important than the clock that hides the stairs that take you down to the Bat Lair.
Yeah.
Or Bat Cave, or whatever the heck Bruce is calling it these days. He's actually changed it a few times for the title.
Okay.
And there's actually a few times where it wasn't all down there. When they first showed like all the collections he had for the stuff, that was up there. There was moonlight coming in. He was just keeping that in a wing that he didn't let the visitors look at.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it was kind of weird that way. They changed it, when it went from Gold Age to Silver and all that. He moved it all down there.
It was all down to the basement.
Yeah, just a bigger cave down there, and it was all down there.
Yeah.
Which is something I did want to bring up, as the house is a location to take your stuff back to and put on display.
Yeah.
The Bat Cave, for instance, would not be the Bat Cave if it didn't have 3 things to it. Technically, 4, but 3 main things. I'll add the extra one, the big, huge computer panel, display thing he's got, the big computer display screen.
Okay.
Adam West technically didn't have it. They had some nice stuff in the background, like for some reason there was like an atomic pile back there, so apparently he had like a nuclear power station.
Oh, wouldn't surprise me.
Whatever, but that's not one of the 3 big things.
Yeah.
If you want to know where you are, is this the Bat Cave? You look for a giant Joker playing card hanging from the ceiling, a large penny on the floor, and a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the background.
Oh. Okay.
If you have those 3 things, congratulations, you found yourself in the Bat Cave. That's how you know. And each one of those corresponds to like classic adventures. Technically, I don't think Batman's had those adventures in most continuities. Thanks to, it's like, oh yes, we reset everything, but the background still looks like he hasn't had those adventures in a long time.
Oh yeah.
The giant penny is from a guy he defeated in like the 40s. The Joker playing card is, I don't think that one has actually ever been told. Presumably it has something to do with the Joker because it's got like the Joker face on there.
All right.
And the Tyrannosaurus Rex is actually, spoiler alert, not that it comes up very often, an animatronic T-Rex. Should someone attack the Batcave and Batman just wants to go all out nuts, he can activate that and he has a Tyrannosaurus Rex chasing after the guy. Not many people remember that, and so it doesn't actually feature in a lot of the stories. They think it's like stuffed or something, but yeah, it's actually supposed to be an animatronic like T-Rex that forget Ace the Bat Hound. You want nastiness to show like how angry Bruce is that you broke into his Batcave. He activates the T-Rex. So, that's kind of awesome. But he takes all this stuff and he brings it back to him. And so he's got like his true house. Stately Wayne Manor doesn't really even properly describe him as Batman. Stately Wayne Manor is just a facade he puts on. The same way, as he's technically Bruce Wayne, but he puts on the facade of Batman. But, the Batcave is his real home. That's where he spends. That's where he truly makes it him, and is a reflection of him, and it becomes a semi-museum of all the stuff he's done. Like he's trying to somehow show his atonement for not killing, the guy who shot his parents when he was 8 years old. Although what he really should have down there is a psychiatrist, but that's a topic for another day too. And so yes, what do you think about that as like the home as the spot to bring your trophies back to? For the guy who decides like, oh yes, I killed the owl bear, and now I'm gonna turn him into a stuffed animal.
Well, I like it, except that it is a bit of a vulnerability. I guess the thing about Batman is he's very powerful, so he can have sort of a fortress of his own, and sort of he can protect it. But for often for characters, it's like, well, no, a home is a liability. Like having all my things on display is sort of inviting the villain to come and, attack it.
Although I must admit, in the comics, I have not seen a lot of stories where people try and like raid like the Justice League Tower to try and get all those trophies they've got on display.
Yeah, true.
And why they even have the trophies on display is always something weird. Shouldn't that be evidence in an evidence locker somewhere? Like,
Maybe
this is what he tried to kill 13 dozen people with when Mr. Freeze used his ice cannon. Not just his regular ice ray, but used a nice little ice cannon and froze Gotham Harbor solid. Like
I don't know. Well,
why is that on display?
They're called the Justice League, so they're sort of like, are they an alternative to justice? Like, they don't trust the justice of the United States, sort of?
I think they're for when, the mundane isn't enough.
Yeah.
For when a guy with a badge and a pistol is not going to save the day. Dude, that's Mr. Freeze. Even that glass container that's encasing his head is bulletproof. So no, you are not going to save the day. You need someone with bat thermal underwear.
Yeah. But, speaking of the sort of branches of government theory, there's legislative, executive, judicial.
And super.
I guess, the super, whatever that is, they're more of like the executive side because they're the enforcers and they make things happen. They're figureheads and they're in parades and stuff like that.
I think they're technically outside of it, even within their own thing. Superman has been deputized, so he effectively works in the jurisdiction of the Metropolis Police Department as a detective.
Okay, so that's basically the executive branch.
But pretty much everyone else is just vigilante. Wonder Woman has diplomatic immunity, so she just can't get arrested for doing all sorts of stuff. She snapped up Maxwell Lord's neck and got away with it effectively because diplomatic immunity.
I'd like to see a series. Maybe it could be a comic book series. Might just have to be a novel series, though, just because it would be very wordy. But I'd like to see a series that focused on sort of the super judicial branch. It's like, because, the superheroes are sort of a parallel to the police. Well, except they're above it.
I was trying to work on a story for that for NaNoWriMo, but it never managed to get off the planning stage because so many ideas, so little time, sort of thing.
But you'd imagine this world would be populated with clerks and lawyers and judges. Like they'd have their own judges. Like I
would like to see a superhero judge sort of thing. Like he's instead of just the gavel, he's got himself like a 4-ton, like almost like a fancy hammer, like you see at the carnival for the strongman stuff.
Yeah.
Flowing robes of power.
Well, there's Judge
Guilty!
Dredd.
Boom! Judge Dredd works kind of like that, but I'm thinking somebody like actually with, like the fake wig hair and, the judicial robes and all that.
Super Judge.
Yeah, he's, like fighting crime. Verdict, guilty, bam! Slams it down, and then you teleport into the local jail. That's how he gets you, man. He's just like super ripped and buff, too. Superheroes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. Oh, there was something I wanted to mention on the whole thing there for that. Going back to the whole previous thing. Oh, darn it! I lost it.
Well, going back a little, we did leave a thread sort of unexplored with sentient houses.
Ah, yes. This is a good thing about what I've been reading in the Girl Genius series. Uh-huh. The castle heterodyne, the family homestead, is sentient. It got damaged in the other war that happened, 18 to 20 years ago. But it has been for several hundred years, an intelligent creation of the heterodynes. And the reason it was always their seat of power, it controlled all sorts of traps and things and was made the town of Mechanicsburg unconquerable. Mm-hmm. So very interesting though, because its personality does not really mesh with the main protagonist. It's the product of evil mad scientist sort of thing, and she's a pretty decent person. Don't anger her. She can build a death ray as good as any powerful scientist out there.
Yeah.
But she is very much closer to the alignment of a hero than the villains of her ancestors.
Right.
And so how well they're going to be able to get along together, if at all, is an interesting question for the long term. So what happens then when the intelligent abode that you reside in is at odds with you? We can even work in, that's the Amityville Horror to some degree.
Yeah.
The classic one. I'm not sure about the new one that came. I never saw it.
I don't know, like how invested are you in this? I guess if you have a whole bunch of stuff in there, you have to get it out of there somehow.
And hey, if you're the military, apparently that might take you upwards of 3 years.
Yes, we did make that point.
So what happens then if you and your home are conflicting?
I'm imagining like a movie called like Moving Day, and like the house is against the people moving, so it's like trying to prevent them from taking the stuff out. I think it'd be a fun horror movie.
Horror movie, or it could also be played as a very good comedy, like almost like a Looney Tunes style.
Yeah.
I think that might
actually like Pee-wee's Playhouse with all the talking furniture. It's like, no, don't take me away. No, I won't survive.
It was reminds me, how far down does that stuff go? I mean, like, the couch is alive, the chairs are alive, and all that. Like, was the wallpaper alive? Was the wall alive? Was the wall? Could you never really hear the wall because they put wallpaper up, and so it was ever forever behind? Were the pipes alive in the house?
Ooh, the pipes alive.
Like, it was just like.
Oh, that'd be awesome! Like pipes could strangle someone.
I'm so alone. I'm stuck inside the walls. I hear all this fun going on outside. Why does nobody open up the wall and let me talk? Because that's surgery, says the wall. You will never be free, for that means my demise.
No, Pee-wee's Playhouse. If you open up the wall's happy, and it's like, oh look, the pipes are having fun too. That was my Pee-wee. And oh look, the pipes are having fun too.
That's not bad. You get a golf clap for that.
Okay, anyways, I tried.
Yes.
So
you did more than I would have tried. I'm not going to try Pee-wee's Playhouse for that. Okay, I can see that where somehow like the wall itself slides open. You can see like the pipes on there. Oh, yeah. Actually, it might be a nice thing to read, because if you go back to the old cartoons, you get like the skeleton dance where they're playing on the ribs. And I could see that happening where it turns out like each of the pipes is like the ribs for the wall. So you can and you can wind up playing like a tune out on there, and then the wall closes up and everyone's laughing and having fun.
There you go. And also, the Addams Family. Did the Addams Family have an intelligent house?
The house was not intelligent per se, but it was
haunted, or
it was so very much in tune with them. Anyone who wasn't really an Addams really was at odds with the architecture itself, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Especially in the movie, where you're trying to pull the right chain to take you down to the Addams family fortune. And all that, and if you weren't an Addams by heart and by trade, you could not find the right one, and you'd always wind up going throughout the various, wrong route areas of the house. So in that case, you have a nice example of a non-sentient house, although in the movie the gate was sentient. Okay. The house was not, but it was so very much in tune with its residents, anyone who wasn't a member of it could find themselves at odds. The plants were fairly intelligent too, so you get almost towards that. Mm-hmm. But it was just a nice case of almost like symbiosis going on, which I think works best. I recall in 3rd edition there was some feat where if you were a spellcaster and you were in your abode, your sanctuary, you gained power from it. Your spells were cast at a much higher level. I think it usually worked better for NPCs, like you fight the evil wizard in his lair, and you're in for a harder time than if you were to coax them out somehow. So play with smart tactics. But PCs could take it, and then like anyone trying to attack your home, by golly, you can fight back even stronger because you and your home, it made you more powerful, and you made it more powerful. And so there's some interesting examples there. But by and large, not quite the same, as that. I do like the concept of you being more at home and more powerful at your location. Like if I'm running a situation whereby you've ticked off the Assassin's Guild and they're coming for you, because it's your home and you know it so well, provided you do spend time at home and know it well enough, gain bonus to attack, like a +2 to your checks and your attack rolls and damage, because you know the location so well. You've, in your mind, considered, like, okay, should someone be attacking me from this location, this is how I would go about it, and how I would do things. Yeah. You are, a PC person in a D&D world. That thought should have crossed your mind, so I'm willing to grant you the circumstance bonuses.
Sure, why not?
So, yes, we've been going for about 90 minutes now. Do you have a bottom line as to are homes worth it in the story, or are they effectively more hassle than they need be?
They probably are worth it. I had one other thought that I think we grazed against, but we didn't get into, but I wonder if, like, in the world of D&D, if you could have sort of a spirit of a house, and like this would be kind of cool to have a house as an intelligent item and have its own intelligence and be able to talk to it.
There's a term for that. It's not Zeitgeist, but there's a nice term. I looked it up earlier. It's like an Ortgeist.
Okay, so there is like
the spirit of a location.
Yeah, and there was a Roman idea. I think they're called
Genius loci.
Yeah.
Which actually is a little different than what we originally got,
Or hearth spirits is another name for them.
There's, a different term for it. Yes, Ortgeist was the term I was looking for, the location spirit. But for them, the genius loci is where a deity spent some time and manifested sort of thing and did something.
Oh, so that's a little different.
As opposed to it being somewhat sentient in its own sense, which relates more to an animism-based religion.
Yeah.
So, the whole thing about, like, everything having its own spirit, that works a little bit better.
But that would be kind of cool to have, like, almost like basically a fae. You know how there are dryads for...
Yes.
Like, have a fae creature for every house.
An embodiment thereof. Whether or not you can make it manifest. I would love a campaign where I could work that out effectively, where, every notable location has this thing. That said, I think the only time I've really seen it applied to any use in D&D was in the Ravenloft campaign setting, and that's when you don't want it the most.
I don't want that to be true.
So it's one of those weird catch-22 situations where, it's like, oh, yay, I love the idea. No, not in that setting, not in that setting. I think, bottom line for me, it's worth it in stories like novels. It works out for many good reasons. Technically less so in gaming situations.
Okay, because you don't spend a lot of time there.
Well, it's your downtime location, so I suppose if you want to write like what you do on your daily basis when you're not adventuring, hey, go for it. And if the DM gives you an experience point for detailing your non-adventuring life, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, yeah.
But, that said, it is mostly the downtime thing. Unless you want to use it as your motivation, like I want to make the best, library the world has ever seen, so I shall build a library around me, and I'll go down to these dungeons to take these lost books and tomes, and I shall make, like a nice coal, what's the thing where they put coal over paper and then they rub it over? Yeah, coal rubbings of these, long lost obelisks, and I shall get the whole thing and effectively have it recreated in here. I think that's a great motive for going into a dungeon.
Yeah.
It works a little bit more if you're a spellcaster, but I mean, you could just be like, oh yes, I'm a warrior, but don't think I'm just some uncommon brute. I'm also a patron of the higher arts. And so, I want to build this so that maybe one day we won't need fighters. And that's when I will get them all, because I will be the only fighter.
Yeah.
No. Think good. Think hero. Sorry. I think done right, it's a great tool, invaluable, and you can gain so much from it. Like, as I said, it reflects on the hero. You can learn a lot about the person by where they're living. Mm-hmm. He said with a lot of little kids mess around his own area here.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and too, like, to draw this out a little longer, the home as an adventuring space, I don't know if that works for D&D, but I can imagine some kind of role-playing game in which you have almost that Narnia scenario in which the home becomes its own, like you're exploring the house, and it just seems to go on and on. And
you know, I actually tried something similar to that, whereby you had effectively like a portal to an extra-dimensional maze space.
Oh, yeah.
But nobody picked up on that. Nobody decided, like, oh boy, we can just, like, have adventures in our own home, and then when we're done, we go home, close the doors, lock it up. Tea time.
Well,
no,
yeah, I guess
nobody took me up on that sort of thing, and I was like, oh.
It's like the girl next door. It's like you never realize that they're right there, and it's like the dungeon next door. It's been there the whole time. You could have been exploring, having.
But you know what the weird thing was on that?
Yeah.
Is I had it so they cleaned out the house and they found the gateway, and then they lost the key to it somewhere within there.
Oh.
And so what I wound up doing was, like, some guy comes in afterwards.
I found this key.
No, he doesn't find the key. He takes it and he starts charging people for adventures within there. Use at your own risk sort of thing. He's got guards enough to make sure nothing comes out and attacks the town. But then it's like, once it's 50 gold a chance to get in there and adventure, then the players are going for it.
Oh, now they're interested.
Yeah,
okay.
When they could get it for free, they weren't going for it. They left it behind. They didn't even bother to look twice. They never even decided to find some way to remake a key. But yeah, 50 gold for it? Of course I'll go in. So it's like, Yeah, that's a player mentality. That's a player character mentality right there in a nutshell. Free, don't want it. 50 gold, let's go twice.
Okay.
So yeah, you have
Very
to make
cool.
sure you either explicitly state that sort of stuff out, or you have the right kind of people that are willing to have it as their adventure location.
Cool.
So make sure you spell things out in advance if you're starting that sort of campaign. I've had some odd experiences with it, but whatever.
Yeah, give some hints at least, yeah. Or even bash them over the head with some hints, but whatever it takes.
It was right there. It was like an infinite potential dungeon, and they can go in whenever they wanted, and the monsters randomly spawn, so they could have all sorts of fun adventures. No, they left it behind. Okay, let's just go home now. Let's sell the loot and leave the doors open in the house that we just cleaned out of monsters.
Well, I guess it goes to show that just XP and loot aren't necessarily
the only good motivators.
Rewards, yeah, because we've been talking about homes per se, and obviously people like characters seem to be motivated by things like their families and the things that they want, their own home, their own space, stuff like that.
But see, if I was in that campaign, I would have made a deal with the local nobles, establish a beachhead inside there, and slowly start clearing out the dungeon, and and making sure nothing comes out, and make it like a fighting front. You don't need to go to war with another nation. Go to war with the maze.
With the dungeon, with the maze.
I would have had so much fun with that, but apparently, either no one was interested in the big dungeon sort of thing. They wanted the smaller stuff, or I just didn't drop proper hints.
Yeah, well, they obviously had other adventures, so there were other things to do in the world.
Yeah, well, they kept, once they realized there's a 50 gold fee for it, they kept going back into that dungeon. It did have about a 25% mortality rate, so they kept having to make up new characters, but that was because it was like one more room mentality. I can clean out one more room. Yeah. And then next thing you know, you get eaten alive by giant rats. Because, critical hit, lose 4 hit points, I'm at -2. They get your, because everyone else left you behind.
Mm-hmm.
So, players, say la vie.
So are we done for real?
I think we're done.
Yeah.
Yes, if anyone else has any ideas, stuff to mention on this whole thing, how can they contact us, Josh?
Send us an email, thesimulationist@gmail.com. Write me a tweet. I'm not even sure how tweeting works, but I do have a tweeter and I read it. @SpaceBoot1 is.
And you can do private tweets now too, apparently.
Yeah. @SpaceBoot1, SpaceBoot numeral 1 on Twitter. We're also on. You can leave a comment on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thesimulationist, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/thesimulationist.
Put something up on our page there. Ask us a question, make it out.
I believe you can post and you can comment on our posts. And
like if someone had done like an entire essay on like the nature of the superheroes like abode themselves, I would love to read that. So let us know.
And I'll have a look around the internet in general and see what I can dig up also, because there might be some articles. But
I've seen a few things on the Absorbiscon blog, but I mean that stuff goes back over many years. So I'd have to really hunt down that sort of thing. But by and large, he was mostly interested more in architecture and how it worked right for the hero. But that's something else for another day.
Okay, yeah, architecture is another topic. Okay, so I think that's everything
covered. How you get a hold of
us? Catch us at GotaCon the end 2 weeks from now, or 2 weeks.
Well, last if you're listening to this, not so fresh.
If you missed this year's GotaCon, there's always next year's GotaCon.
It's getting bigger and better every year, so it will be there next year.
Yeah. That's all for now, I think. I've been Josh Trelevny.
I've been Ryan Kirky.
Send money.